and welcome our first speaker, Jarid Polis. Congressman Polis has been in Congress since 2008, but he has been a very significant force ever since his arrival. He serves on the powerful Committee on Rules, Committee on Education and Workforce. He has played a major role in investment and appreciating the importance of education, particularly in the technology field. He has previously received the CCIA's High Tech Defender Award for a number of reasons, but one of which we all remember most clearly is his amazingly articulate and effective defense of blocking the SOPA legislation, which was so threatening to all of us and the internet. He played a role that was unique, particularly focusing on cybersecurity issues, being someone who could understand and explain to his colleagues in a way that made them realize they did not know what they were doing. We're really pleased to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Jarid Polis.
Well, great to be here this morning, and hello Internet as well. As a former Internet entrepreneur, one of my objectives here in Congress has been to try to open the eyes of other members with regard to the innovation economy, entrepreneurship, and the Internet, as well as provide a new, fresh perspective on tech issues, including the need for supporting innovation. I had the opportunity to chair and found the bipartisan House Caucus on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, continue to advocate for federal policies that promote innovation and expand our economy. I'm going to talk about a few areas today: IP and trade and the nexus, copyright reform, education, patent reform, and immigration. So IP and trade. So as you know, we are at a very important juncture in negotiating several trade agreements, TTIP and TPA, among others. And many of us believe it's time for a new boilerplate of intellectual property language that evolves from the language that we've seen in the leaked versions of, for instance, the TPA, that reflects the true interests of innovation and the growth of our own economy, and allows Congress the prerogative to implement updating and changes to intellectual property laws rather than lock us into a legacy approach that would be encapsulated in somewhat binding international treaties. Unfortunately, our negotiating strategy and our international treaties to date have not kept pace with our current high-tech economy or where future job growth in our country is likely to continue to grow from. I remain concerned that an overly broad efforts by our trade negotiators to address legitimate issues like international counterfeiting and theft of intellectual property within the TPP agreement has resulted in an actual expansion of IP laws and enforcement to the detriment of innovation. And as many of you might agree, that the process itself of negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership has been troubling. The absence of digital rights groups, internet consumer groups, and companies that store, order, and disseminate information from the advisory committees has been very challenging. We've consistently tried to get a broader representation of interests of the American economy and the ITAC groups. Have had very limited success. I've been pleased to work with CCIA in particular to urge U.S. Trade Rep to expand the representation on these committees to a larger group of economic interests, which is absolutely critical in formulating our negotiating strategy. CCIA has been critical in our discussions with the USTR regarding the importance of maintaining a balanced intellectual property framework in TPA and TPP. Just this week, we're circulating a letter that we drafted with your help to the Senate Finance and House Ways and Means leadership, urging the committee to take into account the importance of the internet economy when developing a TPA bill. Please tell any members of Congress that you know care about this issue to sign the Polis letter here in the next week to show the congressional level of support for taking into account the importance of the internet economy. Now, the USTR has remained open to changes in the provisions suggested by myself and others, but the devil will be in the details, and we'll see what emerges. We need to make sure that nothing in TPP would diminish the United States copyright limitations and exceptions, as well as preserve the prerogative of future Congresses to make important changes that reflect the evolving needs of the digital economy. I've also been pleased that the USTR is reviewing ways to ensure the TPP doesn't stand in the way of reforms of copyright terms, for instance, those suggested by the U.S. Copyright Registrar, similar to the comments made by Registrar Polis that registration be required to obtain the benefits of TRIPS Plus term extension. Now, moving to patent reform, one of the few strongly bipartisan issues that this Congress has made some progress on, and I think there's a path to a signature of the chief executive. It includes provisions that reduce the overhang caused by patent trolls, including fee shifting, heightened pleading standards, and reforming the demand letter transparency process. We hope that these reforms will help significantly reduce the negative impact of patent trolls on the innovation economy. I'm pleased that the Senate is moving forward on these reforms. We're awaiting their markup tomorrow on this bill that will overhaul our current patent system that's costing billions of dollars to the American economy every day and is a detriment to startups as well. We hope that a version emerges from the Senate that can be conferenced or reconciled with our House version, ultimately resulting in sending legislation to the President's desk. I continue to work on science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM education. Another bipartisan bill that passed committee yesterday was our charter school reauthorization. We hope to have that on the floor in May. In addition, we passed the STEM bill, and we continue to work to include computer science programs across our K-12 and higher education system, and to make sure that the needs of a 21st century workforce are met in our public schools, not just a 20th century workforce. In addition to preparing a qualified workforce at home, it's critical that we have a pathway that people who have talents and skills are able to deploy those skills here rather than be forced to compete against us in other countries. And therefore, immigration reform is absolutely critical to the innovation economy and the internet industry. I was proud to help lead the New Democratic Coalition in advancing immigration reform by introducing a bipartisan House immigration reform bill, H.R. 15, which currently has over 200 sponsors, bipartisan support, diverse group of members, very similar to the Senate bill, and something that we believe, if we could get to the floor of the House, would pass and would be sent to the President's desk for a signature. While the release of the Republican standards in January, the principles on immigration reform was a positive step, we're still waiting to see a bill or bills. We're open to a multitude of approaches. We want to make sure that the needs of the innovation economy are met in any immigration reform. In part due to the innovation economy, the scoring for immigration reform is of great benefit to our country. The Congressional Budget Office found that it would reduce our deficit by over $200 billion, create an average of 120,000 jobs a year for American citizens, and it also enjoys overwhelming public support. Over 70% of the American people, including majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, support immigration reform. And again, I believe a majority of the House of Representatives supports immigration reform. It's simply a matter of getting a bill that allows us to act on our opinions. In this time of too much partisanship in Congress, I'm still hopeful that there is a path, with your help, on passing immigration reform this session, and look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to help realize the transformative power of technology and the internet in strengthening our economy, increasing our global competitiveness, and creating jobs for Americans. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up and answer any questions or take comments on any of these topics or any others that are on your minds.
Thank you very much. Let me start off with one on immigration in terms of the timing. I've heard two theories of when it may be able to be politically acceptable to get through the House. One is lame duck session, but a more optimistic one is after Republican primaries have happened in a lot of places, that there could be a window there where members are willing to do it. Do you have a sense, talking from your colleagues, that either or both of those are likely or possible, and which one?
I've heard both of those as potential timing as well. Of course, We also fear that no timing might be in the cards. There's not a lot of legislative days on the calendar. So if the plan is to bring it up during our active legislative session, and keep in mind many Republican primaries have already passed, Texas had theirs last month, it would need to be very soon. There would also be an opportunity in the lame duck session, which will be colored by the effects of the election one way or the other, to take up immigration reform again. It would be a very condensed time frame, keeping in mind that whatever the House passes is likely to be at least slightly different, if not significantly different than the Senate, and there needs to be a process for therefore getting it back to the Senate and reconcile or negotiate any differences. So certainly those of us who want to see success on this issue would rather see some effort here in May and June. I think that would increase the likelihood that something could, a work product could come out of this Congress. See, my colleague, Ms. Lofgren, has joined us as well.
Zoe, welcome. Let me follow up with one on, well, James, go ahead. Our VP from Europe, James Waterworth.
Thanks. It was extremely interesting listening to everything you said, particularly as someone who's not so familiar with Washington. And one thing that really struck me was your appeal that there is potentially a tension between trying to have the necessary flexibility for the digital economy, but also structuring trade deals. So there is this tension between wanting trade deals because they bring increased opportunities, but the danger that they make things rigid as things change in a way which can't be foreseen. I just wonder if you have any thoughts on how best to deal with that, because I've heard many policymakers in Brussels and different other capital cities in Europe express similar sentiments. I wonder if you have a formula for how to get the advantages of trade deals without locking in outcomes which may need to be evolved over the coming years.
Well, again, I think that many of us who are evangelists of the new economy and of innovation have a natural proclivity towards internationalism and free trade. So I think philosophically, many people who support innovation support innovation and trade and exchange of ideas, products, and services internationally. However, that doesn't mean that a trade treaty that locks in incumbent advantage, prevents current and future disruption, is necessarily a step towards freer trade. It's no different than the policy challenges we face at home. They're simply in the international arena. We often, as we saw with SOPA and PIPA, among many other efforts, see that incumbent interests use the force of law to attempt to co-opt disruptive innovation. And there's no surprise that in addition to looking at domestic law, those same incumbent interests will look at international law, such as it exists between countries that are signers on various treaties. So what's critical is that, yes, our nation, as well as other nations that are part of the TTIP or TPA process, push back on that, preserve their own autonomy and legislative prerogative with regards to intellectual property, agree to, within the context of trade, the concept is critical that they treat foreign innovation no different than domestic innovation. But beyond that, there should be a great opportunity to provide different levels within each country, as long as there's not any favoritism shown for domestic innovation over international innovation. So I think we need to come back to that principle and make sure that it doesn't matter where the innovation comes from or where the invention is from, that they're treated the same from the intellectual property perspective. But I think there's more than enough room for different, and I think, if anything, having these kinds of different policies will only serve to promote innovation.
Hi, thanks so much for coming to talk to us today. Ross Schulman, also with CCIA, and I work on our privacy and surveillance issues. And so I wanted to just kind of get your read on the Email Privacy Act, on which you are a primary co-sponsor, and which would update the Electronic Communications Act in a badly needed way from our point of view. And I know that you know that we think that. And I just wanted to kind of get your read on where that is right now, and is Chairman Goodlatte likely to look at it, or are we going to have to fight real hard for that?
Overwhelming support from members on both sides of the aisle. It's one of the easiest asks that we have, and when we want to go more co-sponsored, you just tell people about it, and they all want to co-sponsor. I don't even know what we're up to now, but it's a very high number. Yeah, it would pass overwhelmingly. I mean, it's the type of thing where if we were able to advance it, I would think it would be a suspension bill or, even a unanimous consent bill. I have not heard anybody who's opposed to it. I mean, it's certainly possible that some law enforcement interests might have problems with it, but overwhelmingly popular. I think anybody who looks at it objectively would say if email existed as it is today when the law was written, would have been treated a different way. And of course, there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. As for its path, again, I think we need to continue to impress the urgency of dealing with this on Chairman Goodlatte. I think my colleague, Ms. Lofgren, who serves on the committee, might be in a better position to indicate the prospects for that. Again, I think it is overwhelming support on the committee. There's no question about that. I'll take one more.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the patent legislation, which is now pending in the Senate, and whether or not your sense among members, let's assume that the Senate will do something. Have you gotten a sense of the strength of position on some of the key issues? Really, patent quality is one of the issues which has been more controversial, and I think you're in a position from first-hand experience to have a sense of the importance of good patents and how damaging bad patents can be. I'm just wondering if that issue does surface as a real focal point of debate, whether or not there's enough support among colleagues. Do you think that they'll be able to be a force to get the kind of reform we really need in that area?
Well, I think right now it's in the process of going through the Senate, and we'll see what emerges from that. We don't know that yet. Once there is a work product of the Senate, we can make the determination as to whether it's something we should push back against from the House. Again, if there is an effort to push back and if they weaken it or make it insignificant, that would likely be a bipartisan effort, and it would simply enter a negotiation phase to see if there's some agreement that we can do. But I think there's not nearly as much interest in the House in doing something that's simply window dressing and doesn't address the problem. So I would hope that my colleagues would have a bit of a backbone, and if something that is less meaningful emerges from the Senate, there would be some pressure to ensure that the bill actually does something rather than just pass a bill for the sake of passing a bill. Thank you again. Would appreciate your help in getting more of our colleagues to sign our letter regarding the TPA instructions around the internet economy, and appreciate your work on innovation and on a high-tech agenda. Thank you.